So I am very much privileged to be a young person about to moderate this session. And it is an enormous honor for me to welcome industry giants, people who are doing what we are about to talk about. They are trying to solve the problems. They are trying to tackle it from the government's perspective, from telecommunication, and then civil society. I think one of our panelists runs through the civil society angles and then also energy. And so without much ado, I want to welcome our panel. So good morning once again. And we've had two presentations. I mean, first off, from Rio, setting the scene, giving us context from where we stand, the gaps, the challenges that is confronting Africa. We heard from Group Head of Sustainability, Giovanni, telling us from the perspective of renewable energy, internet rights or is being driven by power. Without power, there's probably no internet. We know the issues. I suppose there's nothing new for the panel to talk about. But then there's a major question that actually, I believe, sets the tone, where we're going to talk about the infrastructure deficit, the digital infrastructure deficit. What kind of collaboration, innovation, and infrastructure ecosystem are required to increase Africa's competitive advantage when it comes to digitalization and digital transformation drive? I'll start off with Director General. Maybe you'll set the tone. Director General, because, of course, Smart Africa is driving what we want to actually realize from the digitalization perspective, from skills. I know they are doing massive investments in fiber optic, the infrastructure side of things. And so you would probably set the tone for us. What is the current situation? The infrastructure deficit? What kind of collaboration? And from your angle, I'm sure that there's been a lot of conversation with collaboration, with national states, governments, civil society, private sector, a lot of collaboration going on probably. You'll probably let us know what is happening and then set the tone for us.
Thank you very much, and for inviting me to this very young audience, and myself being also a young person, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, just to set the tone, to set the tone for the young people, I think it's about time for Africa we all know there's an opportunity. We heard it from the keynote. We talked about a young population, 60% below 25 years of age. To stop talking about opportunity and start doing it, that's exactly the reason why Smart Africa was created in 2013 by 7 heads of the state. Today, it's a 35-country member, totaling about 1.1 billion population, with a sole vision. With the sole vision, only one vision, is to transform Africa into a single digital market by 2030. I'd say 2030, which is 8 years, which also coincides the SDG goal, the SDG, which is in 8 years. And the missions, the vision is to transform Africa to a single digital market. A mission is to drive the Africa digital agenda with a bold, innovative, multi-stakeholder approach, which brings us to the collaborations.
Yeah.
When you think about 2030, if we look back 10 years ago, what have we achieved in SDG? If we continue with the rate of achievement for the past 10 years, for the next 8 years, there is no way we can connect the unconnected. Impossible. Africa is about 39.8, close to 40% or 42% based on certain statistics, connected only. And the average in the world is about 53%. So only 47% of the planet remain unconnected. So there's a need, there's a sense of urgency to connect Africa by 2030. And it's quite possible. It's only possible with the digital collaboration. The collaboration is very important. The private sector here, I have on the panel, they need to play their role. The government also need to play their role. But it has to be a very innovative collaboration. I can explain myself. As I always said, Access to capital is not the issue. And I want the young generations to understand that. Africa was colonized is not because Africa is poor. Africa was colonized because Africa is rich in terms of resources. That is one thing you need to know. That's the new narrative about Africa. But to really deep dive into this to understand it, access to capital is not the problem. The capital financing is like the rain. For it to rain, we need certain condition of the cloud. When those cloud conditions are met, the rain comes. For us, this condition of cloud is called policy harmonization. How do we make Africa attractive so that investor, like a multinational MTN or other operator, can really see they cannot look at Africa as one country, as Rwanda, 12 million, or Kenya, 48 million, or even Ghana, 30 million. They have to look at Africa as a 1.3 billion. Scalability is the issue. And in order to tackle that, we need to harmonize our policies, and that's what Smart Africa is about. Very important to note. So, yes, infrastructure is very important. Today, the investment gap, it's a financing gap, is about, estimated by the World Bank, a moonshot report, about 103 billion US dollars, where about 30 billion is for infrastructure, 53 billion dollars is about network maintenance and so on and so forth, and we have a 2.4 billion dollars for policies and about 18 billion for capacity building, which is important. Because remember, for young generation, when we said, yes, Africa by 2050 will constitute about 42% of the world workforce, we're talking about meaningful youth. You cannot be a meaningful youth if you're not educated. And today, the education is not just going to school. It means you need to be a tech savvy. You need to understand what's going on around you. For us, Africa, remember this. As we are advancing, yes, 10 years ago we heard about, or 15, we heard about Facebook, Google. Now we're moving into Meta. As we are moving into the technology landscape, it means the digital gap is actually widening. So what do we need to do to catch up, to leapfrog? It means Africa, our young generation, they need to really invest themselves in the developments of context applications. We are not waiting for Mark Zuckerberg to come and actually teach us what to do, because transformation, first of all, is digital transformation in the local context. Why? Anyone can build infrastructure. Chinese can build it. European can build it. Asian can build it. What is really important, innovation and transformation, is always in the local context. And those local contexts only rely on you, the future generations.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Wonderful. I realized that Monvita was nodding and Lily was also nodding. I mean, we are getting into it. The issues confront us, as pointed out by Director General: innovation, youth, bringing on the government, policy regulation, and the key word that he kept emphasizing on is Africa is not poor. Potential is here for us to see. From your perspective, from Vodacom, collaboration, innovation, ecosystem-driven initiatives, what can you touch on? What can you add on what Director General has also cited or pointed out?
Thank you. Thank you very much. So again, I will comment on what it takes to accelerate digital transformation in Africa and how can we do this. Everything you said, Director General, spot on. I'll point on 4 things. One, is the connectivity itself. You know, as much as we talk about mobility as a norm, many people have a mobile phone in Africa today, but really it is not. Most rural Africa is not connected. So how do we together ensure rural connectivity and serve the underserved? Because that's where the economy of Africa lies. Most youth, most women, and that's where the most poverty is. And with digital, that's where you can accelerate more. So as much as it sounds like a cliche, but I think it's a very key important point. Connectivity to rural areas. We Vodacom, the time has gone where we build our own tower. MTN goes and build their own tower. We have to collaborate better and see how we can share. But we must go to rural Africa. And in the same line, government has a massive role to play. Okay, they talk about, rural connectivity. They charge us 30% in the last, I don't know, 10 years to contribute to
The
universal
government is
access.
always charging.
But where is it? Where is the allocation? The money is going and the allocation is not coming. So we need to come together, government and operators. Let's go to rural areas. Let's really connect the rural. So once you start there, of course, most towns are connected, right? And then you come to the service layer, right? The device layer, okay?
Yeah.
We're still, today there is no price point for an affordable smartphone. Tell me. My grandmother in village, maybe not such a village, can go and say, I bought a smartphone today, guys, with my money that I saved. Is that a possibility today? No. In many countries, we still pay taxes to bring smartphones and devices. So when you talk about digital acceleration leading, while you have the basics that are not ready, a challenge. So let's work together. Let's make sure that there is smart, affordable devices that will deliver services to make us lead. Point 3, enabling policies, as you mentioned, super key. Policies that foster investments. Today there is 5G, right?
Yeah.
Which will just help us leapfrog, offering services and digital services. But are they there? Is the spectrum available? If we get it, if we invest, will you change later as a government, right? So it's very key to have policies that are enabling to offer spectrum so that we can invest and offer digital transformation, right? Those are the, and then one last point for me, which is extremely key for digital acceleration and leading in Africa, is the actual services themselves, the M-Pesa of the world. M-Pesa has changed the way we live our lives today. And it's an African innovation that has completely transformed how things are happening together. But there's so much more. The Director General talks about local innovation in things that matter in Africa.
Yeah.
There is plenty there. We have, personally, I'll tell you, I have spent 5 years of my life running around Africa trying to sell digital solution in agriculture, healthcare, education to governments. Solution that serve the people, that support the government to become more efficient and not waste time to do things. There's no point today of a rural clinic taking stock of medicine, a piece of paper. Not today, not in the 21st century. We have those tools, they are there, but the government is not listening. Somehow there's a disconnect between the tools for development and the political will for government to adopt them, and us as private sector, civil society, to work together to make sure they are delivered in our countries to enhance acceleration and development, right? So there's plenty of that, but I feel like each one of us wants to innovate in their little area and then go and sell it for themselves. Can we think together? What are the challenges our governments are facing? Okay, that together we can make sure we digitize service delivery for the better of our people. And everything is there. Let's just work together.
Awesome. Everything is there. Let's just work together. It's getting exciting, Lily. From the legal regulatory compliance, I mean, from MTN also, we see snippets of probably what Monvita has said. You can relate to most of it. However, she pointed out silos. Why are we working individually? Why are we in silos? How can we break those silos? I don't know what MTN probably has done. I don't know what you also think we should do, maybe what Director General should do from Smart Africa to break the silos. From the government, because he has 35 member states now. And Monvita said the governments are not listening. I don't know why they are not listening, but then...
Well, they are listening, but don't quote me wrong here. They haven't.
I feel they're probably listening, but then there is a bit of conflicting priorities. Where to actually fix the resources. And they think of digital infrastructure as a responsibility for the telcos. They think of infrastructure probably as, build roads. I think yesterday, Jeremy pointed out that in yesterday's conversation, that the government only thinks about infrastructure as roads, this and that. From your angle,
Yeah.
what should be done? Maybe from what has been shared earlier,
Yeah.
how should we confront these challenges?
Look, I think we have an opportunity to increase the level of collaboration. I agree that our governments could listen more to the private sector and look at opportunities to address the challenges of digital inclusion as well as financial inclusion. Because I think we have to face the fact that banks are not going to build bricks and mortar, and whether it's Momo or M-Pesa, that is a digital solution that accelerates financial inclusion.
Yeah.
So it's a couple of things. The first is our regulations need to be amended to catch up to the digital era. And the amendment of the regulations in and of itself has got to be done in collaboration with the private sector through industry bodies such as Smart Africa, GSMA,
yeah.
ATU, ITU, to which all of us belong, including the policymakers. So I think that is starting to gain traction, and there's an opportunity to increase that level of collaboration. The second is how the regulators and policy makers see MNOs. I think the time to classify MNOs as simply providers of telephone services has come and gone. At MTN, like at Vodacom, we provide financial services, we provide InsurTech, we provide digital services, as well as telephony. And because we at MTN believe that our whole purpose has got to be linked to providing everyone with the benefits of a modern connected life. I say this because governments themselves recognize that there is the digital gap, there is the infrastructure gap, there is the usage gap, and there's a coverage gap. And I'm sure all telephone MNOs and MTN, Vodacom are day in, day out engaging governments in order to close these gaps, because we all believe in Africa's potential. I think the regulators and policymakers, therefore, need to see MNOs less as a contributor solely to the fiscal economy and more as partners to bring about Africa's full digital potential, including inclusivity. There's also a need to accept that, you can no longer have a top-down approach to regulating the industry, and that it has to be inclusive such that you foster collaboration. So, for instance, just yesterday we partnered with Smart Africa in launching our digital skills program. Because we have the capability, we are embracing collaboration, and we recognize that in order to reach the youth, provide them with opportunities to upskill, we need to also be able and willing to invest in the tools that will enable them. We recognize that there's an infrastructure issue, and Giovanni mentioned that power is a bedrock to it. But I think we also need to do two things. One, be accountable, such that we create sustainable communities and environments. And that's why committing to net zero targets so that we create sustainable economies is important. At MTN, we have said we will halve our carbon emissions by 2030, and we will get to zero by 2040. It's a big commitment. But it is an investment into ensuring that whatever our contribution is, we take accountability and we lead and engage with regulators to making sure that we drive what we can and actually motivate them to also meet us halfway in their regulation and formulation. Lastly, it's not just about acquiring spectrum to, close the coverage gap. I mean, in Rwanda, the minister mentioned that they have opened up the broadband policy for which we are grateful. South Africa has 5G, Nigeria has 5G. We're moving towards 4G and 5G in a lot of our markets, but we need policies and regulations that enable that, and we need affordable spectrum.
Affordable spectrum.
Right, because with the spectrum, we close the capacity issue, and we build capability to include even those people that are in the rural areas, so that we are now also creating more inclusivity. It's not only that, but it's governments creating the opportunity for MNOs to invest in infrastructure. At MTN, we are partnering in subsea cable, but we are also ourselves, through our company Global Connect, investing in fiber from the north to the south, from the east to the west, including in countries where we don't operate. And those countries where we don't operate need to recognize that we are looking at a collective and we're taking a long-term view about Africa's potential. And so they need to enable that kind of investment without necessarily requiring a presence. So in a nutshell, I think there's a lot that can be done. Enablement is the key.
Enablement is the key. There's a lot that can be done. Enablement is the key. Wonderful. You pointed a lot of elements that has to be harmonized. I mean, with Giovanni citing power to be a bedrock, we don't want to undermine that. But then there are other things that seems to also come up and catch up with the need to actually provide those access to affordable and clean energy. There's an ongoing conversation that renewable is the future. Your zero targets per MTN would rely on renewable energies to meet those targets. Chibuna, you know I'm coming to you, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, of course, you're the last person who hasn't spoken. With your work, I mean, I've read about a few of the projects, Luni, Lighten Up Nigeria Initiative. What can you add on with what Lily has said? And from a renewable energy perspective, and with your work with Kiru, how can you also be a part of the big conversations? I mean, that whilst you are bringing in the fiber optics, whilst you are doing maybe the data centers, because data centers alone is massive energy consumers. There's a need to build solar farms to support that. What can you share with that, and how can you also pinpoint the need for collaboration and innovation within the broader digital infrastructure conversation?
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so in 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we realized that there are other things we needed to do to support the community where we operate. So we looked around the healthcare centers in the community, and we discovered that there was literally no electricity. And without electricity access, they cannot actually administer proper healthcare services. And so we decided that we were going to change that, and we had to put in solar energy in one of the communities that we were working in Abia State, Nigeria. And what we discovered was that renewable energy actually attracts digital infrastructure, because when you have electricity available, then people want to, get mobile phones, they want to subscribe to financial services, they want to buy data, or subscribe to financial services, they want to buy data, they want to, get computers and all that. So for renewable energy, it's really critical to advancing and also accelerating the digital infrastructure and closing all those gaps in development. So that's the work we do at Luni. But in terms of collaboration, I think the major thing that we need to do in Africa is that we need to lower the barriers of trust. And how can we lower the barriers of trust? We need to connect more with our fellow Africans, and that can also be facilitated through digital infrastructure and fiscal infrastructure. And fiscal infrastructure is the bedrock for digital infrastructure. For example, in Europe, you have so many, all the countries in Europe are connected by rail. And that particular element allows them to collaborate and interact with each other, interact with different countries. So it's not about an issue of language or an issue of a country. We can actually connect Africa together through fiscal infrastructure. And that fiscal infrastructure will drive the demand for digital infrastructure, because for you to have an efficient, interconnected Africa, you need that efficient digital infrastructure to actually drive that, right? So I feel that we need to lower the barriers of trust through connectivity, through intra-continent mobility systems. That's one thing. And like Director General pointed out, he said that we need a sense of urgency, and I agree with him, because a sense of urgency is actually very important. We need to declare a state of emergency on our digital infrastructure gaps.
A state of emergency.
Yes, a state of emergency has to be declared on our digital infrastructure gaps, because we are not taking it very seriously. And I'm speaking because we are the government. If we say, okay, the government, we are the government, right? We put in the leaders there. So we are not taking it seriously. So that's something that we need to point out. Yeah. Okay. And I feel another thing again is that we need to really come to practically implement what we know as the African Union agenda. So what does African Union mean? Is it just a place for us to meet and interact and have policy documents? We need to get to work on those policy documents. We need to put in practical terms what African Union actually means. But thereby uniting Africa,
54 countries coming together.
So using events, using businesses. So coming from a business perspective, I overheard, I was having a conversation with someone earlier today, and he said, wow, opening a business in Rwanda is very easy. Once you have a business, you can set up business, they give you a visa of $150. And I was like, are you serious? Wow. Now I'm thinking opportunity, right? As a business owner, I'm thinking opportunity. Maybe we come to Rwanda next year, you see?
Need to set up.
And that's how you connect. So building those connections, we are the same. Africa is one. So we need to build those connections and lower the barriers of trust. That's what I feel that we need to do.
You know, I'm wondering about this. Connection, lower barriers of trust, bridge those gaps, work together. You cited African Union. We are talking about the government. Sometimes I find it very difficult to talk about the government because they have a manifesto and they have a political party, and sometimes the presidents themselves, they get a bit confused with what they should actually focus on. What's the agency? So we need someone, probably, from where I stand, maybe from the bottom up, as you cited, who will just go to the guy and say that, hey guys, this is the urgent thing. It's a state of emergency. Why are you not putting money here? I feel like we should be more, aggressive. But then there's a big question that's also hovering in our mind, that who is responsible to lead the way? Are we going to say the government? Are we going to say maybe intercontinental trade? Maybe the AFCFTA as the secretariat, AU, or the regional blocks? Maybe let's just break it down to the various regional blocks, ECOWAS, East African bloc, and for them to take charge and lead the way to fast-track the conversation and make sure that we leapfrog into the digital future, making Africa digital. I'm wondering, what should we do? Who should take the lead? Collaboration has to come from somebody initiating and starting. Director General, I'm coming to you, obviously, you knew that. And then we'll probably go to Lily.
Thank you for the questions. I think there's a lot of things said, lowering barrier of trust. My sister, she also said a lot of services have been developed and proposed to the government, and the government is not responding to it. There's one thing we all need to know. Our head of the state, they don't get elected to the office with a digital manifesto.
That's exactly what I wanted to say earlier, but thanks for pointing out that.
They don't get elected to the office with a digital manifesto. And digital transformation is, first of all, a transformation of mindset. That's number two. Number three, we this is, we are called Smart Africa because we are bold.
Okay.
Bold, you have to tell the truth.
Wonderful.
Unfortunately, we in Africa, majority of us, we still have something called epistemic syndrome. It means we've been given independence 60-something years ago, but our actions prove that what we do is like we're still not independent. What we need is not money. What we need is a mindset. And the mindset in this alliance of the willing, Smart Africa is alliance of the willing. I must really admit that for the past 3.5 to 4 years, we have seen nation driving aggressively the digital transformation. Head of the state, they are really committing in doing it, but head of the state alone cannot do it. I will explain that. We all think we are brought up in the beginning thinking that we go to school and I'll go to work for the government. Young people think they're developing services. I'll come back to my sister's issue.
Yeah.
We've developed many digital services. We propose to the government. Government is not acting. I will ask you one question. Has WhatsApp come and advertised in Africa here?
No.
Has Facebook come and advertised in any government? Has been any advertisement on the mobile money? That's what I said, meaning connectivity. When you develop an application, when you develop a services which addresses the need of our society, you do not need to advertise it. You do not need to advertise it because do not confuse between e-services public and e-services private.
Of course.
And I will keep on saying this. Coming back to my brother, lowering the barrier of trust, I actually will go far. The intra-trade in Africa represents barely 18%. In Africa, it represents 69% in Europe. Why? It basically means Rwanda, for buying maybe cocoa from Ghana, has to probably buy it from Switzerland or Belgium. It's a reality because we don't trade each other. You know why? Because we don't trust each other. That trust is reflected on the young people. That's why Smart Africa, as we're speaking now, we're doing a pilot on the digital ID between Benin, Senegal, and Togo, which is based on Smart Africa Trust Alliance. In fact, the #1 beneficiary of that Trust Alliance, they are the operator, MTN, Vodacom, and Airtel. Why? This will allow, okay, let's take a region, for example, ECOWAS. They said, ECOWAS, we have harmonized policy on identification, right? It's very important for our young generation. You want to travel from Ghana to Ivory Coast, they tell you you need a passport. You arrive in Ivory Coast, for example, or Ghana goes to Senegal with the biometric ID of Ghana. Can you do anything with the biometric ID of Ghana in Senegal? No, because we are not really integrated. They're not interoperable. These are the foundation, these are the problems that the digital ID is solving, which will allow a customer coming from Senegal, go to MTN office in Benin with the biometric ID of Senegal and ask for a service. They don't ask for a passport. Once they swipe the digital ID, your biometric ID, it goes and do the authentication nationally and regionally, and for you to do the continental KYC. Unless we build that trust, we're not going to unlock the opportunity we have in ourselves.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Unless we build that trust. Lily, what can you add on to that?
No, I agree. I think there's a lot of initiatives that we're working on, either as MTN, through Smart Africa, through GSMA, and a lot of trust has got to be built into the system to create enablement. And that's where the challenge is, because we still, whether we have an AU or not, we have to still remember that we have individual countries within the AU as opposed to an AU that functions as a unit.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember I was saying to someone earlier today that, you know, when our forefathers came up with the concept of the AU, there was even a principle of creating a single currency.
Yeah.
And creating a single trade, you know, market, which put Africa first, which allowed Africans to basically be their own saviors, and recognizing that we are the ones we've been waiting for, everybody in this room. And I think because we have also had leaders that got diverted by power and other dynamics, we have got to challenge the AU, and luckily Smart Africa has 50, how many, 35 country members, to really, you know, come back to what we were on the path to achieving. Because I still think that that is a fantastic, amazing vision, and that when you have willing partners in the private sector, when you have industry bodies that are willing, that are already innovating, that are already positioning things for you to simply just allow, but you allow MNOs, OTTs, coming in without holding them accountable, without regulating them, without even asking them to contribute to taxes. In the countries where they take and have access to data of the people there, but have no responsibility and accountability, then that shows us that we also need to have not only enablement, but fairness and parity to those that have invested over the years in Africa's potential.
I think they are used to having this conversation. Our panel are used to having this conversation. I'm trying to disrupt what is actually usual, but it seems it's impossible because these are the critical aspects of the conversation. We need to continue to have it. We need to continue to drum it, right? Monvita, we'll definitely go to the audience. I know you have questions. I see someone raising their hand, like, man, look at me. Would get to the audience, we'll allow questions, maybe 2, 3, if time will permit, all right? So let me just get the thoughts from them, and then we'll come to you, okay? Thank you, wonderful audience. Monvita?
Well, I like the Director General idea of decolonizing the mind.
Colonizing, yeah.
Super critical.
Mindset.
Well, who leads, who challenges, who should hold? I think really it is all of us, okay? If you are in an area that contributes to impact of our people, do it very willingly, do it fully in, okay? Not haphazardly here or there, okay? And as operator, we stand in a place where we can make a massive impact, and we are already making a massive impact in the markets where we are in. And just going an extra mile is no longer about just making the money anymore. Our business does not allow us to think like that. It's an impactful business.
Profits with purpose.
Vodacom is, for instance, a purpose-led organization. Our thinking, whatever we create a strategy, is really on how we can transform the continent and the people in our markets, really from the bottom of our hearts. So we will always go that extra mile, make 1 shilling instead of 5, but, you know, touch the people. So the willingness, the political will amongst our private sector, but I don't think we exist in an island.
Yeah.
And for real progress to happen, we must find each other. However difficult it may seem, we must find each other.
Awesome.
I am good at this. I can offer tech. I can offer, you know, accelerated connectivity. You have to come on board. Allow me. Let's have policies. Let's talk about this. Smart Africa, unite us. You know, you are a unifier.
Yeah.
But let's do in a way that we all move together for progress. But I think the other and last point is, if you are able to do something, you know, do it, okay? You mentioned that about energy, and you reminded me, we are going through an energy transition in the world. And we contribute as operators, right? Green gas emissions, you know, scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 1 is diesel and scope 2 is electricity, you know. As Watercom, we have given a commitment. By 2025, we will have scope 1 and 2. And we'll produce our own electricity 100% from renewable resources.
Wonderful.
This is a huge commitment from an operator.
Wonderful.
And by 2030, half scope 3, which is our value chain, everyone else that is not us but works with us. So we are able to do this, show this commitment. Let's invite everyone else. And we hope government will recognize it and we can work together towards that. But the other one, Director General, you said, and I think this is important, creating people-centered solutions.
People-centered solution.
Yeah, things that people consume, and indeed, mobile money, everyone use it because it's useful to them.
You don't need advertisement for that.
Absolutely, and there's plenty of those things, but let's unite together, let's work together and make sure it gets to the hands of the people.
Maybe what I'll do is to listen to Tibuna, you know, just as our panel has shared, and taking a bite on each and every question that has been asked. What do you think, maybe from your angle? What can you advocate for?
Well, what I would advocate for is for better policies to enable the adoption of renewable energies, because if there cannot be connectivity without power, that means we need more policies that actually help to facilitate the acceleration of renewable energy adoption. And some of the barriers that, that pose to renewable energy adoption is cost, because in local communities or anywhere where we operate, people always shy away from renewable energy because of it's expensive, you know, to afford, and because of that, when they consider the investment, they just allow it. Okay, so what I believe that we need to do is to find ways where we can democratize access to electricity or renewable energy through innovative business models, and that's one thing that we are trying to work on at Kiru, whereby we are using mobile technology to accelerate access to renewable electricity. So helping small business owners to have access to electricity using our mobile app. Yeah, so customers only need to connect to our smart grids using smart meters that we provide, and then they have the mobile application, and then they can just pay for electricity using the mobile app. Yeah, so collaboration is necessary as well with internet service providers to also facilitate that. So that's why I'm very happy to be on this panel too.
Fantastic, fantastic. Collaboration is actually a very key element in creating shared value. And, you know, everything that has been discussed today, you could see that it's really about creating shared value. You know, we are not silos. We are not an island. There's an agency for it. Stakeholders, key ecosystem players must be intentional about working together. Governments must prioritize the conversations that really affect the people, or the development that really affects the people. I mean, we should not wait for something to happen, but we should do it, as Mvita said. And there's an agency because there's potential. We shouldn't look for money elsewhere. The money is here. And the money is sitting right on this panel. Okay. All right. So in wrapping up the session, I don't know whether you would have to, you know, some sort of agency, last motivation, something for the audience to carry home, something for us to think about in our own small way. Let me start with Mvita.
Thank you. What the pandemic taught us is that we're not in silos, and we cannot win when we work alone. So I think collaboration has become much, much more important, right? So let's collaborate more. And I want to give a small example around this. We tried to share a platform to be able to register for COVID-19 vaccine, right? And you have to work together with government, private sector, civil society, and the DFIs, right? Where we did it right in South Africa, it worked. So the platform where everyone registered on the EDFS, that was our platform, Vodacom. But because we had worked with governments for many years before, In other markets where we just now said, guys, we have this thing, take it, take it for free, it was extremely difficult because everyone had their own thing. Gavi was proposing one, Oracle was proposing one, USAID came with one, government asked the university to build one. In the end, it never really worked. There was no platform, okay? So working together, we win. And in all the conversation we had here today, we're not in an island, and collaboration between ourselves, civil society, and government is key. And
Awesome.
two, I mean, last one really is...
last one.
So the service layer, I really like what the Secretary General said, innovation that is people-based, and things that solve solution for Africa, okay, and not parachuted from elsewhere, okay. We have those, and I keep repeating it because in our own organization, we have innovated programs in agriculture, in healthcare, in education, that are African-based to solve problems that are from our own countries, okay?
Yeah, wonderful.
But the barrier to entry stays there. It's an 18-month sales cycle, and it shouldn't be that way. So let's align and let's really work together. In words of Jeffrey Archer, that the mobile phone is the single most transformative organ for poverty reduction, for development. That is, it's becoming more and more, that was said how many years ago? It's becoming more and more truer each day. So as Africa, we have an opportunity to win in this digital revolution. There has been many revolutions around the world, industrial revolution, you name it. We can lead on this one, okay? But
thank you.
There's not enough time. We have to work together to do it. Thank you.
It's not enough time. We have to work together. Please give it up for Monvita. Powerful, powerful. Chibuna, what can you share with us? Igwe, Chibuna has a cup. Igwe.
Thank you very much. Okay, I believe almost 54 African countries and other countries are as well represented here. So what I have to say is that we need to be connected and stay in touch, really, because we need to start seeing ourselves as one people, right? And when we see ourselves as one people, we can then collaborate more, we can trust each other more, and we can do a lot of things together. Yeah, so that's what I have to say. Let's build this connection and let's see ourselves as one.
Wonderful. One Africa, one voice. Fantastic. Lily?
Chibuna is my hero, guys. Look, I think if we have youth that are as clear, as passionate, as committed as Chibuna here, and we have governments that create enabling environments for companies such as his and MNOs and everyone else who is entrepreneurial to thrive, then we will thrive as a continent. So I think that there's a real opportunity for us to come together, to collaborate, and to see the obstacles as opportunities for us to innovate and overcome.
Wonderful. The obstacles as opportunity to innovate and to overcome. One people, one voice. Wonderful. Director General, take us home.
Yeah, thank you very much. For us, I just would like to share my final words, the fact that when we talk about sustainable development in general, the sustainability on the long run is driven by the innovations that can only be happening in the adaptive regulatory environment that, of course, all the MNOs are talking about. And now let's go back to the innovation for a second. If in your world as a young people, we talk about a startup, everybody wants to be a unicorn. If the definition of a unicorn is basically any market cap evaluation about $1 billion, technically means that if every single African young man actually develop an application, sell it for $1, how many unicorn we can create out of 1.3 billion population? It basically means sky is not the limit, but sky is just the beginning.
Wow.
Thank you.
Powerful. I work in the startup space. A lot of people want to launch, and all they think about is reaching that 1 billion. But they look at several markets and they want to, be acquired outside. The innovations are not staying here. And this is something that gives me hope, having the conversation with these industry giants. It gives me hope for the future. I mean, the future is today, the future is now. There's an urgency for us to act decisively with more intentionality and to work together. And I'm very proud to have moderated this session, and I'm humbled to have an audience that is a full blend of intergeneration. I mean, young people. Almost 60% of the occupants here are young people. So I believe that there is that mind shift. Our mindset has been shaped. We are seeing the opportunities which are right around us, and we can take hold of the future and lead the change that we want to see. Have we preached the gospel well enough? Wonderful. It has been great moderating this session. Thank you all.